Hello there once again, Talkin Fight fans around the world. Welcome to another episode of The Scoop featuring the champ, Bola Ray. And I, for one, don't have a clue what you have lined up tonight. So, like everyone else, we're in for a pleasant surprise. What do you have lined up? What do you have lined up, champ?
Well, let's see. Well, this decade has seen some of the greatest heavyweights, arguably ever, to step into the squared circle. And finally, they're actually starting to dance against each other for supremacy. But what about decades past? In the 2000s, the Klitschko's reigned supreme, and personally, I felt that they were just an example of belt gluttony. They hogged the belts and the victories between them. Didn't their parents ever teach them to share? Like, honestly. But what about the 90s? A decade that saw dominant heavyweight champions like Mike Tyson and Evander Holyfield, or absolute anomalies like George Foreman, right over to division defining champions like Lennox Lewis and Riddick Bowe. It was an amazing time for heavyweight boxing. Um, there genuinely could be a new champion at any time. But what about the next tier down? These are the men that were responsible for making this one of the most competitive eras in heavyweight boxing history. The unsung hero, if you will. My name is Bola Ray. This is The Scoop. Today I'm going to talk about one of my favorites from the 90s, and that is one Merciless Ray Mercer. Talk about an unsung hero. Born April 4th, 1961, he grew up as a military brat in Fort Bennings, Georgia, and then Hanau, West Germany, due to his father, Ray Mercer Sr.'s enlistment. Now, in his own accounting of history, he was a handful as a child, always in trouble. His father has suggested him partaking in some team sports, but it really didn't resonate with him. As high school ended, he really had no desire of furthering his education traditionally. So he took a year to, let's say, find himself. And then he enlisted in the army, following the footsteps of his dad. 3 years later, he was introduced to boxing via an opportunity presented itself to get out of doing field exercises in sub-zero Fahrenheit weather by being the post's heavyweight champion's sparring partner. Now, something you have to understand. Ray had never laced up a pair of gloves prior to this. And outside of the occasional street fight, he had never been technically trained, taught how to fight. I'd say that laziness was a powerful motivator, but to the point of getting your ass bust, no, that's a totally different level. A few months started out as expected with Ray leaking oil with lips that looked like flotation devices, but he was no quitter. And he stuck with it. Months later, his game started to improve, and pretty much the rest was history. He went on to win not just fights, but tournaments and titles. The United States Amateur Boxing Federation title, and in 1985 and 86, the U.S. Army Inter-Service Heavyweight Championship. And, well, in 1988, he won the U.S. Amateur Boxing Heavyweight Champion, just to mention a few. Ray went on to represent the U.S. in international competitions prior to the Olympics. And in the U.S. versus Cuba fight, or tournament show, he stepped into the ring and stared across from none other than future boxing great Felix Savon. In this fight, Felix was rocked twice, where if it weren't for questionable officiating by the Cuban ref, Felix may not have seen the final bell. There was a guy by the name of Kelvin Big Dog Richardson. Most will remember him. I'll do a show on him later. But he remembers fondly how absolutely devastating Ray Mercer was leading up to the Olympics, stating that Ray would knock sparring partners out of the ring with 16-ounce gloves on. One would think, if he could do that with 16-ounce gloves, what's going to happen when he has 10-ounce gloves on? He's liable to kill somebody. Kelvin actually went on to reminisce about the sparring sessions and how Riddick Bowe, who was the super heavyweight representative from the United States, as Ray was the heavyweight representative, Riddick Bowe did not want anything to do with him, did not want to spar with him or at all. But they were forced to. And when they did, it was electric. This is huge. Because if anybody can remember Riddick Bowe in the Olympics, he was just a big mouth, thought that he was greater than all. Just a big mouth kid. And to see that a smaller fighter actually gave him not just work, but hell, wow. And put the fear of God in him, it explains a lot. He talked about even his training regimen, his overall fitness level was unheard of. They'd go for their 5-mile runs, and Ray would come in second or third of the collective. You never see the big boys that close to the finish. All the little crickets, they're the ones who win the race. And Ray's coming in second or third as a heavyweight 200-pounder. Come on. What a talent. Now, Ray went on to the 88 Seoul Summer Olympic Games, where he had 4 fights, 4 wins, with 4 knockouts.
Wow.
On his way to his gold medal, winning the gold medal. No one heard the final bell. 89, Ray was given an honorable discharge from the U.S. Army so as he could pursue his professional boxing career. Now, after he won had a string of knockouts, August of 1990, Ray steps into the squared circle against none other than Smokin' Bert Cooper for Cooper's NABF heavyweight strap. This was a defining fight. And this was a defining contest because Ray didn't just knock down Bert Cooper, but won a unanimous decision for that strap. This was young Bert Cooper when he was still taking his career seriously and was nothing shy of a demon. And Ray beat that Bert Cooper. A few fights later, Ray has a dance with an undefeated Francesco Damiani from Italy for the WBO heavyweight title and won. Now, 9 months after that, October 18th, 1991, Ray steps into the ring against undefeated super puncher Tommy the Duke Morrison. Wow. Wow. One absolute display of utter destruction of one's fellow human being. The fight starts out with everything going Tommy's way. He won the first 3 rounds easy. He was feeding Ray these combinations, and Ray didn't have an answer to it. Like, there was one combination that really stuck out where he'd throw a jab at Ray. Ray would turtle. He'd then throw a right hook that would land just behind Ray's left elbow. And what that does is, because it landed, Ray's left elbow would then slide back to protect that shot, that area, so as it doesn't catch again. And that little opening, Tommy would then turn into a right uppercut, which would catch Ray flush on the chin, followed by a left hook. He did this several, and when I say several, it may have been double digits in the first 4 rounds. And Ray took this flush, and that has to be the greatest testament to his granite chin. I still can't believe that he didn't even get rocked. He didn't lose his balance or stumble or anything. He just took it and then continued on. First 3 rounds were clearly Tommy's rounds. And then the 4th round came out. And this was the first time that Ray had exposed a kink in, or anything called a kink in Tommy's defense, or Tommy's game for that matter. Ray fought better than he had in previous rounds and caught Tommy with some impressive shots. Right hands which jarred Tommy, like literally just like the jarrings that I would expected that Tommy would have caused Ray to have win those combinations, but so be it. Something else happened in the 4th round, and that was the fact that Tommy started to look tired. Now, prior to the fight, in the pre-fight commentary and stuff like that, Tommy looked stereotypically sensational, like chiseled, but big, strong. And seeing how the fight was going all his way, you figure that he was pacing himself rather well, but he started breathing heavy by the 4th round, like breathing out of his mouth the whole 9 yards. Now, then the 5th round came and saw an exchange that I will not soon forget. Wow. Ray had his back against the ropes. Tommy came in and was caught with a right hand. That jarred Tommy. Ray used this opportunity to spin Tommy around. And then he unleashed 17 unanswered punches in a row. Somewhere between 9 more punches to go and 6 more punches to go, Tommy was unconscious. And Ray continued, smashing him with right hands like he stole something. Around the four, when he had four more punches to deliver, the ref finally stopped the fight. And yet Ray continued. With three more punches to go, the ref actually is now grabbing Ray, trying to hold him back. And Ray continued. Ray beat this man to the ground. It was the first time that Tommy had ever touched canvas. And yeah, he was there for a little bit. I have never seen such savagery ever in that sport. Like, wow. Let's leave it at that. After this impressive win, Ray was on the short track for a big fight against the then two-belt heavyweight champion Evander Holyfield. The WBO belt was a minor world title belt. So Ray had a mandatory challenger in Michael Moore, but opted to relinquish and vacate that belt and fight the 42-year-old Larry Holmes, which a win against him would solidify this fight with Evander Holyfield. Now, what a disaster. Because Ray didn't just lose a fight against arguably the greatest jab ever in the sport, but he also lost the opportunity to fight for the world title, and Larry took it. After this, Ray goes through, let's say, a little dip where he fights against one Jesse Ferguson twice, and there was allegations that how he tried to bribe Jesse to take a dive in the first fight, which I just don't understand. But then he lost that fight, and then he came back and beat Jesse the following fight, and then he had a fight against Marion Wilson, which resulted in a draw, but which is unfortunate because it resulted in a draw. He lost out on the opportunity to fight Frank Bruno in Hong Kong for Frank Bruno's WBA strap. But patience is a virtue, and Ray finally got the opportunity to fight Evander Holyfield, which he ended up losing the fight on points in a unanimous decision, mind you. He then went on to dance with Lennox Lewis, which is one of the most controversial losses in boxing for a while. I'm going to do a segment on that in my greatest robberies in boxing. He went from there to fighting Tim Witherspoon, a former world champion Tim Witherspoon, and this time it was again another controversial fight, but at least it was in his favor, and he won that fight. Again, I'll do another episode in the future on that fight. Ray's career pretty much fizzled out from there, and he tried for big fights, but nothing really panned out. Ray then tried his hand at mixed martial arts and kickboxing, which was nothing to write home about. The long and short of it all is that the boxing community owes a great deal of gratitude towards Mr. Ray Mercer for providing us, or at least partaking in some of the most epic fights that boxing fans have ever seen. He was in the big fights with the named notable stars of the 90s. So, once again, thank you, sir. Now, if you like this episode, please hit the like button and subscribe. And do not forget to smash the notification, letting you know when I come on next.
That's right.
It's your boy Bola, and that's the scoop.
So, where did he get the nickname Merciless?
He was angry all the time. He destroyed guys in the amateurs, and that's where it came from. He was such a devastating puncher. They had never seen a puncher like this. Like, you have to understand, when Calvin Richardson was talking, Big Dog, he was a super heavyweight at the time, and he's watching this guy. He was in camp as a sparring partner for the super heavyweights, and this guy's decimating super heavyweights, knocking them out of the ring with pillows on his hands. Like, he was a different level. I genuinely wanted more for him. I remember watching the fight with him the first time when I saw the fight with him versus Lennox, which was just shameful. Lennox got out jabbed by a guy who was 4 inches shorter than him. Lennox, who relies on his jab to set up everything, got out jabbed by Ray Mercer. It was hard to swallow, and Ray, you could it was palatable, his disappointment, and he was just like, he just wants to fight. This is early 90s, and Mike Tyson was king. He just wanted to fight Mike Tyson, get that huge payday, and call it a day. It didn't happen. Yeah.
Luck and timing.
Absolutely. So.
Well, thanks very much. Appreciate that. That's a great piece on a fella I'd kind of forgotten about. But he's one of those unsung heroes
that's exactly it.
You bring back that name, and you bring back a whole bunch of a string of fights that he was involved in.
Exactly.
And to be blunt, they were such great fights. I can't even remember, like you were saying, which ones he won, which ones he lost, because they were just great fights.
Yeah, they were. Yeah,
good stuff.
I really enjoyed him. I really enjoyed watching him. He was absolutely fearless. But I wish him well.
We all do. Thanks very much, Ray. Appreciate it. And to all you fans out there, thanks very much for joining us. And we'll see you tomorrow night.